Hey everyone, welcome to the reality show. Some of the topics we'll be discussing today include the Dylan Mulvaney controversy with Bud Light and their recent numbers showing that maybe this wasn't the best marketing decision. And then later on, we will talk about the Cenat riot in New York. There was a riot in New York. We'll talk about it. We'll tell you more. We actually have exclusive footage, and that's not a Razi joke. We actually have footage that you won't see anywhere else that is exclusive to us. It doesn't actually show anything that you necessarily can't see elsewhere, but it is footage that is you can only see at ARCUK. And yeah, before we get to our main topic, I am joined by Marco and Richard, Jim Brown, Kirk Wilcox, Megan Ribbons. I'm just saying everybody's names now. Hopefully our viewers know who everybody is. And if you don't, you can find out more in the description. So, here at ARCUK, we always try to think of ways to get attention to what we do. As with any business or organization or movement, we want to reach our target audience. We want to keep reaching our existing audience. So we think of different ways. You may have noticed with the reality show that the titles are a bit more out there than with previous shows in some cases. And our viewership increases over time, but it's never, nothing we've done has ever gone viral. We're not getting mainstream media attention. But one group that is particularly good at getting attention is the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. And considering that it's a party, it's a small party in a small state, a party that doesn't isn't likely to have anybody elected to office at any time soon, or to any significant office. So some of the things that they've done that has gotten attention in recent years.
You have fixed hair. Is that a natural? Is it? Thank you, man. I do.
Yeah. By the way, that gets attention. So we that they posted a picture, they tweeted a picture, sort of Twitter mostly that does this kind of stuff. They tweeted a picture of Meghan McCain, the daughter of Senator John McCain, crying over her father's casket, and they tweeted a picture and said happy holidays. They tweeted $6 million minimum wage or you're anti-Semitic. They responded to I believe it was a local congresswoman who said something about wanting insulin to be free and medicine to be free, and they responded. She's Black, and they responded with that her picking crops should be free. So and their most recent quote. All right, I don't know if I have this quote, but I think it's in the title of the episode, was about January 6th, where they said that politicians should be fearful every day, basically endorsing those actions and perhaps worse than those actions. I am going to go to the Americans here first, because I follow American politics. I think we have our own controversies in the UK, but we don't have anything quite like this. Jim, I'm going to go to you first. What do you think of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party's marketing, social media marketing strategy? You are muted.
I really didn't know a thing about them until I saw this clip. So all I can say is that obviously what they say is disgusting. And I mean, I don't know what to say other than they are another example of the nuttiness that I'm seeing in American politics everywhere, from people who represent themselves as all sides, any side of the spectrum. You can get someone who, or groups who, cherry pick certain things they say are principles and then completely distort and exaggerate's not even the word, but distort and invert the meanings of the principles that they, start with. One of the questions that I saw in this in the discussion prompt was, what does their behavior suggest about how, quote, libertarians think? I'm not sure that's a great question, in that this is different from, I'm not partial to libertarians at all. I think they have big problems, but these are not even normal libertarians. I believe you would find that Rand Paul considers himself a libertarian, or at least inspired by libertarian ideas, or maybe it's libertarian with a small L, because as people on this call know, the principles of the small L libertarians have been perverted and distorted over the years. So it now means something, I think, quite different from what it meant, say, a century ago. But I'm not sure this suggests anything about how libertarians think. I know people who call themselves libertarians, and they would think this is, disgusting. You don't. So that's my take. I think this group is fringe, and I suspect that any opportunity for someone who is, anti-libertarian or anti-right in general, this would be great fodder for them to seize and exploit and say, oh yeah, these are all libertarians. In fact, these are not only all libertarians, these are all people, these are all Republicans. Not only that, they're all objectives. I could see this kind of thing in the American media being exploited and distorted ad infinitum. So my tendency is, I'm not trying to cut this discussion off. My tendency is to ignore this kind of crap, frankly.
I mean, on the point of people thinking this is what libertarianism is, it almost looks like that's what they would like to achieve, because this is libertarians don't often make the news, but actually in this is episode number 12 of the reality show, and it's the second time we've had libertarians as the main topic. And Kirk, you were on the previous one, so I think we can say that you're our resident expert on libertarianism at this point.
Well, yeah, talking about this Libertarian Party New Hampshire account, they are, I don't know who runs it, but from what I can tell, they've long been run by lunatics. And I'm with Jim on this, that I try not to pay much attention to them because they're not really worth much attention. And it seems like it's hard to keep up with all of the insanity that they've spouted over the years. It's really hard to keep up. And it's like every week they're ruffling someone's feathers. Even the article that was shared. And I noticed even a lot of other crazy libertarians got upset with this. They took the 14 words that a lot of like neo-Nazi types say, and they replaced the word white with libertarian, something about how like we need to secure a society for libertarian children, but it's usually white children instead of libertarian children. And that ruffled a lot of feathers. But I thought Jim was going to go in a different direction. He asked, is this like a symbolic of how libertarians think? I think, if anything, this is symbolic of the fact that a lot of libertarians do not think.
Megan, you're geographically the closest to the New Hampshire Libertarian Party. Are you considering moving to New Hampshire after?
I am not, for myriad of reasons. But so I have a comment on some of the tweets the New Hampshire Libertarian Party made. But before I make those comments, I wanted to ask you, Razi, I mean, I think you're like Jim and Kirk in that, you're reluctant to give voice or to sort of amplify what they're saying. I mean, it's very tempting to just ignore them because they're they're not worth airtime. So I have to expect that there's a really strong positive that you're hoping to get out of discussing this. And I'm not clear on what that is. Maybe you can explain it.
Yeah, so actually, I was going to go to everybody before going to the super chats, but Jonathan pretty much answered it in his second. So Jonathan Honig sent 2 super chats. The second one says, libertarians include Rand, quote, under their umbrella. She's not. His previous super chat was, I saw this tweet and many others from this group. They are vile. Rand was correct. Hippies of the right. But the previous tweet I read is the reason why we talk about libertarians. I think libertarians are associated with Rand generally, they don't mind that. They're happy to be associated with Rand. They will use quotes here and there that kind of fit some of what they think, and then they will go to some of them will go in the direction that this party's Twitter account goes. So yeah, I think the main reason we do this is to differentiate ourselves from them. This is of different nutty groups out there. This is the one we talk about most because this is the one we're most likely to be associated with.
Okay, I think that's a fair answer. So I think maybe to kind of amplify what you just said, I'd say particularly when I read the quote where they're saying politicians should be afraid, I think I'm paraphrasing, politicians should be afraid of citizens every day. I found that really striking because it reminded me of the ARCUK episode yesterday with Harry Binswanger and Jean Maroney, where they talked about motivation by fear versus motivation by love or motivation by values. And so what really resounded from the tweets that I saw from the New Hampshire Libertarian Party was this, it sounded like motivation by fear, that they're afraid of a lot of people and they're lashing out. And perhaps what is most striking to me about objectivism as a political movement is that it really is a motivation by values, not a fear of other people oppressing us, but a real desire to achieve and flourish. That's a little vague. I don't know if you guys want to expand on that, but that was the thing that really, in terms of differentiating ourselves from, the really hateful things these people are saying. I've never heard anyone on this channel say anything hateful.
Marco and Richard, I mean, here in the UK, we have, as I mentioned, we have our own interesting politicians. We don't have, we actually don't have any Libertarian Party that gets any kind of attention. Maybe they're doing something wrong and they can learn from, if they are out there, they can learn from the New Hampshire Libertarian Party.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got no equivalent of this whatsoever. I mean, the monster raving loony party has got a higher brand recognition than anything with the word libertarian in it. And they're people who want to stick cushions on the front of trains to stop them having accidents. So I think, although we have silly parties like that like to mock the system, this seems like a dark equivalent to me. It almost seems satirical in a way, but it's so pro-mean. It's provocative, and it just seems to be mean, which is absolutely the opposite of what the benevolent outlook that any objectivist would have. Certainly, if they're doing it right. And the other thing which I find particularly strange coming from this side of the pond is that it's often very linked to guns in terms of the freedom that they talk about. And lots of these tweets are very, very linked to the right to bear arms and stuff. Now, I understand that's a right, but obviously from our perspective over here, that comes from a very different place, but it just adds to the sense that it's fostering anarchy and keen to cause chaos.
And the problem with libertarians is that they take conclusion from ethics and politics from Ayn Rand, and then they make their own commandments. They gather rules for their own movement. And usually the initiation force, to them everything is allowed because you're self-defense. So and because they purpose to protect capitalism, to be in favor of capitalism, they actually quite viciously dangerous, because as Peter Schwartz says in The Voice of Reason, in a concentrated article they wrote, actually liberalism hasn't got a philosophy. That's why they're dangerous. They'll splinter off, they'll say something, and because they haven't got a proper philosophy, they will eventually get themselves into a corner and justify all sorts of odd things. And the street account is quite remarkable in terms of rantiness, deranged comments, and lunacy, really.
Yeah, Richard, you mentioned the Monster Raving Loony Party. That's for our friends and viewers in the US and elsewhere who don't know that this is basically a party that is a protest vote. So in the UK, when you watch election night, there's 600 and something seats in Parliament, in the House of Commons. When you watch election night, they go seat to seat. They don't go to all of them, but they go to many of them, and they show the results being read, and the results are being read on stage, and behind the person reading them are all the candidates in that constituency. So you'll have the conservative candidate, the Labour candidate, the Liberal Democrat, a few other serious or semi-serious parties, and then you'll have somebody dressed like you would expect somebody from representing a party called the Monster Raving Loony Party to be dressed, and that's kind of their protest. It's a protest, a general protest against politics, as I understand it, and it doesn't pretend to have an ideology of any sorts, whereas libertarianism is an attempt at an ideology, political ideology.
Now I'm imagining somebody dressed in like a Cookie Monster onesie. Please tell me that's real.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we're talking about. But the saddest thing is that some of their crazy policies have actually ended up mainstream. I mean, initially they were the ones that came up with passports for pets, and now that's a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that's a thing, but that's
You might say they've unleashed a monster.
So when they stamp these pet passports, is it like Blue's Clues and they just put like a paw print on it or something?
I think it's to do with keeping us safe from rabies, but it's paperwork doesn't keep you safe from rabies.
There's an Apollo Zeus super chat that Megan, I was hoping you would read, because I'm sure I should really understand the pun here, and I don't. Although
I'm really sorry, I never have
once it's explained to me, I will understand it. But he says rom antics.
Oh yeah, it's a novella I wrote. So it has to do with memory, and I could go on and on because it's actually based on real science. Several years ago, a couple of the labs implanted silicon chips into the I want to say it was the hippocampus. It's embarrassing that I don't remember this now, but there was actually, not only could they kind of record patterns in memory when these rats were learning a very complex task, but they could either enhance those patterns so they learned it much easier, or disrupt those patterns so that they just couldn't get it. Yeah, that's what he's referring to as the short answer.
All right, so it's not something I should have gotten. I was trying to see how it relates to the story.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out, Apollo Zeus, and thanks for the super chat.
Okay, so if we have any last thoughts on this topic, please go ahead now, yeah, otherwise we can move on.
Well, just on this notion that the LPNH thinks that politicians should always fear for their safety. That was the thing that they said that they should fear for their safety. I think the most that politicians should fear in a rational, civilized society is maybe getting voted out of office, maybe some confrontations at a civilized town hall where they might get their ideas challenged or whatever, but that's really about it. But no, I thought, tying this back to January 6th, I think it's obvious to say that kind of that crossed a big line, and it put us on really threaten America's civilization, because we were going beyond, elections and peaceful transitions of power. A dangerous game was played where we were kind of going into maybe a perpetual state of civil war, where we don't settle our differences at the voting booth or through elections, but through brute force.
Yeah, they even make a stupid comment, something like somebody's terrorist is somebody else's freedom fighter. It's like, Jesus, man, context.
I did have a question about that, and I asked because I really know nothing about politics. It's not that I disparage anyone who does. I admire it. I just don't have the bandwidth. But I was kind of wondering, is getting voted out of office, holding politicians sufficiently accountable, especially when they do something, when they vote something in, or when they write legislation that is really destructive, and quantifiably so. So, for example, if they increase the minimum wage and you can show that X number of people just are unable to find work as a result, like, those are hours of people's lives that they can't recover directly because of these actions. And maybe, having a politician voted out of office and no longer getting attention is the worst punishment they can have. But I'm not clear on what it properly looks like to hold someone accountable for really destructive legislation.
I mean, in the minimum wage example, look, ARCUK does not advocate violating any laws, but if somebody is an employer and needs employees, and I know in the US you have sanctuary cities, like people can come in as immigrants, and the city government will not cooperate with the immigration authorities. And if you're in a position where I think you can hire somebody and they're willing to work for a certain amount that maybe the government would frown upon, I would not understand their reasoning. But again, we do not advocate for violating.
Yeah, but I mean, I realize what we want to do is preserve the positive, allow people to flourish. But what I'm really asking is, what is the proper reaction to the politicians who make life so much harder? Is it simply to be voted out of office? Is there some sort of...
Frankly, Megan, I would put a priority on just holding them accountable for their crimes, actual crimes. And then once we've done that, then we can start, holding them accountable for other transgressions. But I mean, you raise a good point. What are you going to do except vote them out of office? To do anything else undermines our own position. I hate to belabor this, but I think Richard made the smartest comment about this thing that, at least to my mind, to this day. He said that, I think you said, Richard, that these libertarian comments almost sound like a parody. I mean, this is so goofy that I just wonder if there's something to that. If these people are simply taking these extreme positions as if they're feeding the red meat of the media, if they're feeding red meat to the media. That's almost what it sounds like to me as I read that article again. I mean, who would say this? If you actually believe this, would you say this? I think this is sometimes I think there's many layers under the media in the media reports we read, and I'm always on guard. I'm trying to ask myself, why am I reading this, and why am I reading it now? Why is it being fed to me, or why did I come to it? It's always sounds paranoid. I hope it's not. But
speaking of things you would ask, why am I reading this? Jonathan Honig in the chat said has a quote. He says this from 2016. Sounds like a newspaper or a headline of an article. where is it? A candidate for Libertarian Party chair on Sunday danced and stripped down to his thong before leaving the stage. And this actually reminds me, so Harry Binswanger, I think it was early on in the show. I may have mentioned this actually recently. Early on in HBTV, there was an episode about libertarianism, and the producer, made a thumbnail of people dressed very weirdly, and I said to him, "Look, can you make something that's relevant to the topic?" And he said, "These are all presidential candidates for the Libertarian, competing for the Libertarian Party nomination." I remember seeing a debate in one of their conventions, a presidential debate. Yes, this is you can now see that thumbnail here. I remember seeing a debate where one of the candidates was rapping the whole, like his whole every time he spoke, he said everything he had to say in the form of rap. So they are they're basically many of them are anarchists, and it seems like they apply their views on politics to their epistemology, and we see the results.
Razi, an anecdote is not evidence. Maybe a series of anecdotes is evidence, but I once was employed at a firm. It was a great firm. It also employed a person who had been a candidate for a presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. I don't want to name who he is. This person and I had to go on a business trip one time, and this was the most bizarre individual I might have ever met. He actually believed in ghosts. He had stories about a haunted truck, about he was proud of the fact that he had a pistol in his glove compartment as we're driving around in his car, and just gotten his concealed carry permit. If you get a concealed carry permit, you don't broadcast it. That's why it's called concealed carry. This was the most bizarre individual I may have ever known. He didn't last long at the firm, thank God, but there's just one little data point. This guy was a candidate for that party's, he was a presidential nominee from that party.
You don't want to name him, but we're all thinking, actually, I think we're if the more nominees of the Libertarian Party, more presidential nominees, probably the longer the list of potential. It's basically everybody that I know of could be that person. And let us know in the comments if you guess right. Jim still won't tell us, but we'll all be thinking it. All right, enough about weirdos. Let's talk about Dylan Mulvaney. Jim, you're muted. We missed whatever you said because you were muted.
I'm sorry. You were obviously making a joke, and I was the last to get it because you said enough about weirdos. Let's talk about Dylan Mulvaney. I thought that was funny. I was laughing out loud.
I appreciate that. Nobody else laughed, so thanks. So Dylan Mulvaney, the trans person who was featured in Bud Light commercials a few months ago. Let me look at the numbers so I get them right. So Anheuser-Busch lost a staggering $390 million in the second quarter as Bud Light sales to retailers plunged 14% in the wake of the brand's partnership with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Okay, there's different stories, different aspects we can talk about here. One was, of course, the one we've just been talking about, which is the attempts to get attention, and this is one attempt to get attention, and it got attention, and it didn't really work out as well, or it doesn't seem to have worked out well. There's also the wider trans issue, which we've spoken about here at ARCUK. We'll talk about it more. I happen to think, like, from almost, I think I disagree with many objectivists on this issue. The one person I agree with most is Jonathan Honig, who is in the chat. So maybe someday there will be a daily objective of the two of us talking about this issue. But let's talk about this as a marketing, marketing effort. And why was it unsuccessful? Is the problem with the culture, or is the problem with whoever is coming up with these ads? Richard and Marco.
Well, what do you know? We're in 2023. It turns out that there is such a thing as bad publicity. I mean, I think this issue is actually about culture in the sense that work culture nowadays is really gone in the dumps, really. You find a marketing officer who finds a bandwagon passing by and decides to throw the whole company on it. And, lo and behold, you lose about 20% of your sales, which is, quite major. And, to be honest, in a way, it's just beautiful to see that if you ignore your major customers, then reality swings you back in the face. It's just nice to see.
I think the marketing manager for this company said they wanted to make the brand less fratty and out of touch. And that was their motivation behind doing it. But it wasn't really. Their motivation was to get unearned virtue according to the culture of today by supporting, minorities or the supposedly oppressed. And it, crashed and burned off the back of that because it threw all its customers under a bus to achieve that bogus goal. And what's shocking really is that other companies continue to follow them down the same path, despite seeing the outcome to their balance sheet. Like a company here in the UK, Costa, which is a coffee chain, has now got a cartoon out as an advert which shows a man with a double mastectomy on it. And, your aim is to sell coffees, not, double mastectomies. So what are you doing? Surely you're going to lose customers in the same way.
Well, probably these guys, instead of want to do the marketing job, they want to be politicians and activists. And, you see the result.
So Marco and Richard, do you think they are deliberately they know that they are putting the company and the shareholders at risk in doing this, but they're just so ideologically or politically motivated, so they say to hell with it? Or do you think they actually believe, as was implied by this one executive who said, what would she say, this is a tired and fratty brand or whatever it is, thinking that she was going to invigorate the brand and improve sales with this marketing ploy? Do you think these executives are, in other words, delusional into thinking that they'll improve the financial position, or do they just say, we don't care about the financial position?
I think it's the nature of, it's the nature of who works in the marketing departments, the kind of people they surround themselves, the kind of age group and university background they have. I think it's the disconnect between those marketing departments and the executives who run the company, and an assumption that the marketing can be run without a consideration for the effect on the bottom line. That's really what I think's happened.
That's effectively a generation of people who live in the echo chamber and then translate that into the workplace. They don't even consider somebody actually might not be interested in their politics and just buy the product because they like it. But they have to overlay their view of the world, and so that they make these cock-ups, really. I don't think it's malicious as such.
And there have been some royal marketing mistakes in the past. There was a jeweller's here in Britain called Ratner's, which was famous 20 years ago for the chief executive doing a speech where he said, we produce earrings that cost the same as a sandwich, but the sandwich will last longer. And effectively, he wiped half $500 million off of his own company by calling his own products literally crap. Marketing mistakes do occur when people dislocate what they're trying to do, which is produce a good product and promote it for being good, and to work on a reputation they've earned by doing more of that same thing that got them that reputation in the first place.
What would you say to people who, sorry?
I was just saying, I guarantee you this will be a Harvard Business School case study someday if it's not already.
And I was just wondering, because I remember a lot of this was being talked about when this whole controversy started. There's this article on marketing the rainbow.info that talks about Budweiser's history of trying to market to the LGBT community. And what would you say about that? Like, it may be that Bud Light and Budweiser have always tried to market to this crowd, and they thought that maybe teaming with a very popular TikTok influencer like Dylan Mulvaney would help maintain that brand and help just market their beer to maybe trans customers and other people within LGBT.
It's probably just the obsession with, in June, every company changes the logo and puts in different colors to worship at the altar of the alphabet people. But I mean, if you want to make your product inclusive, make it good quality and market it to everyone. I mean, surely marketing to a segment of the market is stupid compared to marketing to the whole population. That's, isn't the point making high volume sales?
I mean, that's exactly what this company has learned in the past. I mean, they were the ones behind the "What's Up" campaign to promote the brand, which probably doesn't come across with my accent, but they aimed at the people talking to each other in a fratty friendly manner, and of course that was a super successful campaign. But you choose to effectively throw all that under a bus by going in the opposite direction and flying the flag for today's fad.
By the way, Marco, when you're referring to alphabet people, you're not talking about Google's parent company. You're talking about the ever-growing acronym associated with what is, I think, now LGBTQIA+. Or I don't know, actually, if that's the most recent one.
Well, that violates the show for sure.
Megan, you've been silent on this topic so far.
I mean, to be honest, the thing that strikes me is just I don't understand why people care so much about who drinks water flavored beer. You know what I mean? Like, I just like losing nearly $400 million in sales because they take issue with one person does not seem proportionate. And I mean, I guess I don't know what to make of. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, when I was first confronted with the idea of trans, the first thing I thought about was how much I wanted to be a mom. And I had some concern about fertility. And so I doom scrolled, of course, and there are people who will spend $25,000 on in vitro fertilization and still not be able to gestate their child. I'm not saying anything against adoption. Part of the reason I really wanted to gestate a child was because I regarded that as my opportunity to give my child the best possible start. There are good things you can do during gestation. So I tracked 30 different nutrients every single day and made sure I was eating right. I could barely hold my head up. I was sick the whole time, and I walked every day because that's part of a healthy, making your baby healthy before they're born. So I'm drawing this out to kind of show how important this was to me. And there are people who will say, if you can't address your infertility, which is a medical issue, God doesn't want you to have babies. And I was so angry by that. So I don't know that I can fully empathize with someone who wants to be trans, but if it's anything like me wanting to be a mom, I have so much sympathy for them. If that's what it takes for them to be authentic and happy, who am I to say no? And who am I to punish them for drinking crappy beer? The only one I will punish for drinking crappy beer is Daniel. He's not off the hook no matter what.
All right, a couple of things on that. First of all, there's the issue. The issue here is that a marketing campaign like this is a cultural statement. I mean, the trans issue is a whole separate issue, and I'll briefly say I think you're wrong on it. Like, you can be a mom, a man cannot be a woman, and no matter what you do, you can do things to your body that will make you look more like a woman, but you will never actually become a woman, or vice versa. A woman can't become a man, and the fact that this is pushed culturally, I think, is Peikoff said it as with many things. Peikoff said it best. He said, I don't have the exact quote, but he did refer to it as a war on reality. There are things in reality that we can change, and there are things we can't change, and this falls in the latter group. But that is an interesting topic which we should discuss again. I do want to make another comment about marketing campaigns that are offensive to some people. So members of ARCUK who have opted into the random group on WhatsApp will know that this recently came up because Gillette had their infamous ad a couple of years ago, basically kind of sort of implying that all men are violent and rapists, and basically all the worst kind of stereotypes about men were included in that, and Gillette was imploring us to be better. And for me, an ad like that, an ad where you insult your entire existing and potential customer base, is a reason not to buy a product. I mean, the problem is, as you mentioned, Richard, if Costa is doing this now, like more and more brands basically will be left with nothing to consume. But I do think there is a line that a company can cross with marketing, and people can be legitimately offended and say, enough is enough. Whether or not,
No, my favorite part of that Gillette story was the Dollar Shave Club just simply responded by tweeting, "Welcome to the club."
Yeah, and Gillette did lose customers. I think they lost customers, right? It didn't do them any favors back then, and I think that's a good thing.
Razi? Sorry, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I had the feeling that this Bud Light boycotting is actually not necessarily people expressing their view on the trans issue, but people are just fed up or be bludgeoned day in, day out on issues that they really don't care about. Most people don't care if Dylan wants to be a woman. I mean, she's perfectly happy, and I wish her all happiness in the world, but people don't care. Just they live your own life. It's just when they keep interfering, telling you how you should live, what you should do. And they find customers of Bud Light finally found an outlet that they can make a change and make their voice heard by boycotting a company. I don't think they are expressing any particular deep view out of it.
I think if you shove an agenda down someone's throat, then they're simply going to want to vomit it back up again. To be honest, I mean, that's literally what's happening, and it's as distasteful as that. But that's it in a nutshell. I think.
Okay, yeah. I partly agree with that, especially your point, Marco. In that people don't care. Bud Light drinkers or old. American, maybe it's not just American, but old American heterosexual traditional men, the vast majority of Bud Light drinkers don't care about the trans issue. But I do think there's something that was offensive to me, to us, to my brother who owns a restaurant and stopped selling Bud Light beer, to my another brother who's an avid golfer and has drunk Bud Light for 30 years and he stopped. I mean, this was a serious thing. There was a line in this article. It said, this stunt triggered outrage among drinkers who accused Bud Light of trying to force progressive beliefs on them and their favorite brand. I don't worry about someone trying to force progressive beliefs on me, and neither does anyone I know. What was insulting about this was something that I think a lot of people missed. This was mockery of the women that the men who drink Bud Light love. This Dylan Mulvaney appears to be mocking the women that, you know, the wives and the girlfriends of traditional Bud Light drinkers, and in so doing, mocking said drinkers. I mean, this really, I saw this and I thought, this is, you can't, I was offended. I said, you can't do this to me. No, that was my reaction. I don't think I'm unique.
I think it was also pointed out that Dylan Mulvaney does have ties with the Biden administration. I guess Dylan Mulvaney was invited to the White House for some event back in October of 2022 and got Biden to condemn Republicans with all the legislation that they've been trying to pass. And that's kind of where the backlash against Dylan Mulvaney kind of started amongst conservatives. And then about 6 months later, Bud Light did their promotion with.
Well, I didn't know about any of that, and I never drink. I'm with Megan. I don't drink this stuff, but you know, but I don't know anyone who it could be, but that wasn't the reason for my reaction. I just considered it a direct affront.
And any of our viewers who consider it the same, feel free to super chat for Daniel's Coors Light budget. All right, so a few days ago,
I said not better. By the way, Daniel is protesting that he doesn't drink Bud Light. The gentleman does protest too much, methinks. However, yes, we are actively seeking super chats to improve Daniel's taste.
Why do you think he's not showing himself while we're talking to each other? You know,
It's a shame.
All right, I don't want to disagree with you again, Megan, but what I remember from my beer drinking days, which are long gone because I realized no beer is actually good, was I preferred Coors Light to Bud Light. But yes, I did hear from beer drinkers that they both taste like water. So
can I just mention something really weird? Effectively, Bud Light has lost the status of best beer in terms of sales, and it's been replaced by another brand, which incidentally is owned by the same company, AB InBev. But because of antitrust competition laws in the US, that particular brand, it's held by a company which is not domiciled in the United States. Therefore, it doesn't count for, although it's owned by AB InBev, it doesn't count as AB InBev sales in the United States. And this is a ridiculous scenario created by our friends, the politicians who interfere with the free market.
I don't remember if I mentioned this, but Apollo Zeus did send another £5 at once again saying on rum antics. So Megan's marketing team is much better than Bud Light's marketing team.
Thank you again.
Yeah, a few days ago I was just on the phone with a friend who was in New York, and we're talking for a while, and he's just walking around, and then he tells me that he seems to have found himself in the middle of a riot, and which is why we have exclusive. I should have said our New York correspondent was on the scene, but we do have exclusive footage from the riot, which we'll be talking about for the last 10 minutes of the show. Daniel, if you want to show us that, is it possible to show it on full screen?
Sure. Just give me a second.
Thanks.
Really proud. Oh my God.
Let's count cops. How many cops are there? Actually observing this.
It's not enough.
That's a big crowd.
Good.
Right. I think there's more, but we can maybe get to that later if we have time. So basically, a Twitch streamer who I have to say I don't follow the culture or certain aspects of it closely enough to have known who it is. Like yeah, when my friend told me on the phone it's Cenat, I'm like, the connection wasn't good. I started searching on YouTube. Cenat, is that what the name is? Anyway, this guy promised to give away gaming consoles, and people showed up, and as you could see, we're throwing stuff at each other, at the cops, we're attacking cops, we're just smashing cars, and just being kind of violent. I don't want to say violent for no reason, because there would not be a case in which this type of thing would be legitimate, but it really is, it's like they're just doing this automatically without really thinking about it. I mean, when I see something like this, I don't know if I'm being unfair here, but my first, like, the anger I feel immediately is at the parents. I think this is young people. Again, people have free will. They are responsible for their own actions. But I think it's very often, especially when you're young, very often a question of parenting, which is why, Megan, I'm going to go to you first, because you're a mother of a young girl, and I know that you take great care in how you bring her up, and at some point she will make her own choices much more than she does at the moment. But yeah, to what extent do you think this is
okay? So the thing I find most inexplicable about this whole story is that the police officer who was interviewed afterwards said that people brought shovels to this free giveaway in the park. And let me tell you, I have had some bizarre conversations with my beloved child. Never has the following conversation occurred. Mommy, can we go to the park? Okay, sweetheart, I'll get the shovels. That never happened. I don't know how it did in New York.
Well, I think there was a building site just near the Union Square area, and people took stuff out of it. So they damaged the poor working people who were working a building site. They took all their stuff and just used them to behave like.
But they do bring lessons, right? They walk by a construction site and say, "Oh, look, some shovels. Let's take those and go to the free giveaway in the park."
Clearly, you've never been to a free PlayStation giveaway. You always bring a shovel.
And not only that, you take
clearly doing it wrong.
I mean, so somebody recommended to me a few months ago that ARCUK should be on Twitch. And Kirk, you're on Twitch, right? Is this the kind of stuff that goes on there?
I mean, mostly when I use Twitch, I'm only using it for my own promotion and content. I really don't watch a lot of other people's content on Twitch. I know a lot of it's pretty unconventional. There's a lot of weird stuff going on Twitch. I think most of it is just people playing video games and goofing around while they play video games. A lot of other stuff is just like in real life. Like, oh, I'm going to go out to the mall and I'm going to videotape myself shopping or whatever. It's like mostly that kind of content, but it's not the content I make.
Jim, do you regularly watch Cenat on Twitch? Is this a channel that you're a regular viewer of?
Oh, sure. And this is the first I've ever heard of any application called Twitch right now. I have no idea what. I assume it's something like Snapchat, of which I don't use. I'm a troglodyte when it comes to social media, and I readily admit it.
Well, did this incident inspire you to find out more about Twitch and
No, I didn't think it was a Twitch issue at all. I thought this was an issue of the loss of civil society. And, you alluded to that with the dereliction of parents who don't teach their children that you don't go and act like a pack animal and take a shovel to the park. There's a really interesting book written in the 19th century called The Crowd by Gustave Le Bon, and he describes crowd behavior. This is a book often read by investors to get insight into sort of what happens to people when they get caught up in a riot, a mass movement. Le Bon says all men have two personalities, an individual personality and basically a crowd personality. I don't think that is true, but he's extrapolating from what he observes. And what I observe is that people, I think partly because they have been permitted to do it, are increasingly prone to this irrational, crowd-oriented, herd-like, pack animal behavior, and they loot stores, they block passage, they assault police, they hurt passersby, they engage in all variety of what should be criminal acts. And this didn't used to happen before. Frankly, I think it could be nipped in the bud with a stronger police response. I thought this particular policeman acted appropriately and even-handedly given the situation. I was pretty impressed with his response. But, there's times when it needs to be stronger. There's times when it needs to be more forceful. They need to arrest and prosecute people who violate others' rights in, a public setting. So I'm a little outraged at the parents, but I'm much more outraged, Razi, at the permissiveness among of this type of behavior among law enforcement authorities. It should never be permitted.
Jim, you're a parent too. Like, how does this happen? I'd like to think my perfect angel would never show up to a free giveaway violently angry. So how does this happen?
I don't know. I've raised 4 children. I can tell you for sure that, and they're all grown, I can tell you for sure that they would not engage. They might go to a crowd gathering like this out of curiosity, but I'm quite sure they would never engage in any kind of criminal acts or harassing police or anything like that. I don't know. And these individuals who did this would never do it if they were, a crowd of one. They're hiding behind the pack.
Well, I have a quick comment on that. Before that, I want to say, Jim, you mentioned when we talked about the New Hampshire Libertarian Party that not everybody who self-identifies as libertarian should be, accused as being a part of that. And the same goes for Twitch. Not everybody on Twitch inspires riots. And if you go to Kirkomania on Twitch, that is Kirk Wilcox Twitch channel or whatever it's called. That's and I like the name. It sounds wrestling inspired. So
should I try it, Kirk? I'm really an ignoramus when it comes to say.
You mean try it like when you do your hard money gym segments?
Yeah. What will an old guy like me get out of it?
From what I know, I think Twitch kind of has this thing like if you stream on Twitch, you're not allowed to stream on YouTube at the same time, or they'll disable your account or something. So I usually so I don't know if you'd be able to do both at the same time, but I guess you'd have to talk to the people who work at Ayn Rand Center UK about setting that up.
The learning curve alone scares me away. I'll stop.
I just quickly want to say, yes, you see that crowd and you think, okay, none of these people would individually choose to do that, which is right in a sense. I remember years ago, I had this, customer service job, and there was somebody there who was a salesman who had just gotten hired, and he was talking about, and he was young, but not young enough to have an excuse for the way he looked at his job in life. And I remember once he said something like, we're all salesmen are liars. That's what we do. And And I was thinking like the fundamental there, the fundamental life choice that this person has made is not to be a salesman, it's to be a liar. I mean, he would have found a way to be dishonest if he was a doctor, if he was running a charity for poor kids in Africa. That's a life choice. How it manifests itself, it could be in different ways, but yeah, this is why we need to change the culture by changing how people think about primarily themselves and how they interact with others.
And let me just say that Kirk's Twitch channel inspires me to take a shovel and bury watered flavored beer.
Marco, Richard, any quick last words? Because I know we are late for the Fountainhead Reading Group.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you saw the guy when you made him now, so it doesn't really come across as the highest intellectual on the planet. So,
And he's the one running the show. All the rest are influencees. I notice how nobody wants to be an influencee. That's all they are, is a part of the herd.
All right, we are a couple minutes late, which on a Tuesday is more of a problem than it is on a Monday. So yeah, for our members, there's the Fountainhead Book Club starts right after this show, immediately after the show. Tomorrow we have Peak Off Wednesdays, we have the Daily Objective, and we have the reality show. So yeah, we have 4 pieces of content within the next 24 hours. Oh, and there's Cutting Edge tomorrow. That's not within the next 24 hours, but that's tomorrow. So yeah, there's a lot of content. There was a lot of content before. There's a lot more content now. Everybody on the show for joining us. Thank you, everybody who's watching. If you liked it, please click the like button and share. And of course, if you're not subscribed, you can do that as well. We'll see you all back here tomorrow.